listening to the Esq.Marketing podcast, hosted by Matthew Lauren, president of Esq.Marketing, where he features successful solo and SMB law firms from all over the United States. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, everyone. I'm Matthew Lauren, president of Esq.Marketing, and you're listening to the Esq.Marketing podcast, where we share success stories to help build your practice. Today, we are joined by Chris Mullins. Chris, known as the phone sales doctor for more than 25 years, has helped hundreds of law firms around the country convert more prospects into clients. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
That was a pretty brief introduction. Is there anything I'm missing in there?
No, nice. I think it gets right to the point, so that's okay.
Great. Today's topic is about determining if your law firm's intake process is good enough. A lot of our clients have marketing programs in place, paid advertising, SEO, email, what have you. So once those prospects come into or notice their law firm and come into their practice in the form of phone calls or form fills or things like that, often there's a whole other piece of the puzzle for them to try to figure out and converting those people into paying clients. Mm-hmm. And that's what you specialize in, correct?
Right, exactly. I mean, at the end of the day, great marketing is not enough if your prospects don't convert.
You're totally right. If you have all this money invested in marketing and you're bringing in leads and they don't turn into anything, then it's all pretty much sunk costs.
And law firms, they get really excited about marketing and all the different types of marketing, and they throw a lot of money at it, which is really important, and they should do it, but they completely forgot about intake. They forgot to add intake to their marketing team.
So you help law firms get set up with your own intake specialists, right? They do the intake process for your clients?
Yeah, pretty much what we do is if a law firm is looking to hire intake specialists, we provide some interviewing to help them with that process. But the main thing that we do is we inspect what they expect. So we listen to the law firm's recorded phone calls and we review them and critique them. And then we coach and train their intake team on how to improve conversion based on the call recordings that we listened to and we heard.
So do your intake specialists use scripts at all?
Yes, and the thing about scripts is you really should call them scripts to get your team used to the S-word scripts and the other S-word sales, because intake specialists are not typically hired that way, and they should be. So you should definitely call it what it is. It's a script. You don't want your intake team to sound robotic, which most people think is how a script is used, but it's used in many different ways. A script really is a roadmap and a cheat sheet with the right type of sales language that your intake specialist needs to guide them through the process. So you should have two types of scripts. One should be the typical one that most law firms are familiar with, which is screening questions. So don't just throw your intake specialist on the phone. Have some screening questions for each type of practice area that you have. And those really would come from, like the lawyer or the law team at your law firm, knowing what's the minimum questions the intake specialist has to ask to qualify that prospect to get to the next step, whatever it is at your law firm. Some it's let's sign a DocuSign retainer on the spot. Some it's scheduling an appointment, or you might need to let that prospect know that you can't help them. So you got to have screening questions. And then the other kind of script is, like we have one that we call a 5-step relationship sales conversion script. This script is sales language. It's built around your intake screening questions to guide your intake specialist to do all the empathy, the sales language, the love, care, and concern, build the trust in the relationship and intimacy, and then kind of close it with a big wow at the end of the phone conversation to get them away from just license and registration, question, answer, question, answer, question, answer.
My favorite part about what you said was at the beginning about how you use scripts, but you don't want people to sound robotic. And I think a lot of times people have that connotation in their head that, oh, they're using a script. And it always reminds me of Art Subcheck, who is a sales guru I used to listen to.
Right.
And he talked about using scripts. And he said, my favorite story he had was about people being in a movie. Like, when was the last time you were in a movie and you said to your friend, oh, this is horrible, they're reading from a script? But yet, you're right. They have to act as a roadmap. They have to use those as a guide to feel more natural later on.
Yeah, absolutely. They have to have it. The thing is, your intake specialists are taking a lot of phone calls every single day, one after another. They have a very difficult job. It's a challenging job that they have, and it's very traumatic. They're taking on the trauma of all those phone calls that they're receiving on a regular basis. So they need a life raft. They need to trust and like almost fall in love with their script and know that it's there as a tool to guide them to help that person feel like they're being helped on the phone and at the same time convert.
How do you guys monitor prospect phone calls that come in?
Yeah. Well, let me say this. Here's what I'd like all the law firms out there to do. I mean, we definitely do it for you, but we're not going to be there every single day. So you're there every single day. So you need to do this. We call it RMFD. RMFD. Record, monitor, feedback daily. So, I mean, most of you are getting your calls recorded, especially because of the marketing. And RMFD is your marketing insurance policy. So when you're listening to your call recordings, which is the R, they're getting recorded, and F, D, monitor, you're monitoring them, you're doing F of feedback and D for daily, then you're protecting your marketing insurance investment. And all you have to do is schedule it. Just get it scheduled on your calendar. I'm not saying it's going to be easy if you're not currently doing it. Any change is difficult with time. Get it on your calendar, push through it, make it be a regular thing. If you can't do it daily, I know different law firms, different size law firms have different resources. But if you can't do it daily, just do it every week. What's most important is just begin and get started and do it and be consistent. Your team's not going to like it. They don't want you to do it. They don't want to hear their recorded voice. Nobody likes their recorded voice for the most part. I don't like my recorded voice. And they're certainly not going to love hearing their calls. And then when they get a critique and feedback or whatever you want to call it, they're not going to like that either. So you got to get through that and you got to support them and help them. But just schedule it, let's just say once a week. You pick recorded calls for your intake team. You as the leader, so let's just say you're the intake director or intake manager or intake leader or team leader, whatever title it is, listen to some phone calls for each team member. And before you let them listen with you, write down your notes. And I want you to cover what's working, because there's always something working. So what's working? What are the opportunities? And how can we fix it? So just you listen to the call as the leader, you write that down, then you have your one-on-one or your group session, however you have to organize it with your intake team member or complete team, however it happens, and you let that team member of the call that you have, first let them review it and critique it. Don't you do it. Let them do it first so that you can get an idea of their instincts of how they feel about the call. So you play the call and they cover those same three areas. What worked, what were the opportunities, and how would they fix it? And then you, as the leader or trainer or whatever your title is, you give them your feedback. You've already listened to it. And then together as a team, you come up with a solution. So RMFD, it's critical. You know, at the end of the day, the only reason to not do it is if you chose all of a sudden not to do marketing, and we know that you're not going to do that. So if you're going to spend time, money, energy, and effort on marketing, you have got to inspect what you expect. listen to the calls, critique the calls, and share it with your team and help them get comfortable with it.
I'm a firm believer in positivity for anything. And I like how you called those opportunities and not what's not working. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. But the other thing, if I can just say real quick, Matthew, that you can do, and this will help the leader of, and I'm saying leader because, you know, all law firms call people different titles and everything. So the leader in that department, it's a lot of work in addition to everything else that they're doing to do record, monitor feedback daily or weekly. So what you can do to help yourself, which will also help your intake team, is in addition to what I just said, require them to do self-critiquing. So once a week, they have to listen to X amount of their phone calls, and they have to cover those 3 areas, and they have to send it to you in an email. So they're doing some self-critiquing, and then you're doing the live coaching and training. Self-critiquing does not replace what I first explained to you. That's critical. But the self-critiquing, it's like what you focus on expands, what gets measured gets done. So the more monitoring we do, the more comfortable they get, the more they get used to it, and the better they get, no matter what.
Chris, I'm curious about onboarding intake specialists, and you touched on that for a minute there about training. Mm-hmm. How do you train on intake specialists?
Well, after you do all the legal training, you know, the understanding of your law firm and all of that, which really should be first, it's kind of like the book learning of the law firm, but making sure that they really understand. Don't just throw them in a room and say, read this. But after you get that part done, it's the part that I want to guide you on is them with phone calls. And, you know, the first thing that you can do is you have an intake specialist that's already sitting at their desk, and you can have the new person, the trainee sitting next to them, but have them listen to both sides of the conversation. Invest in a splitter, is what they call it, and let them listen to both sides of the conversation and then talk about it with the person that they're sitting with, the intake specialist they're sitting with, and then let them get on the phone. And you can tell the prospect that, you know, Mary's on the phone with me and she's in training. People are used to hearing that in businesses. It's okay to say that. And I might interrupt her and answer a couple of questions, but get her on the phone or him on the phone as soon as you possibly can. So listening to both sides of conversations, and then they get on the phone call, and then also let them listen to phone calls and critique them, covering those 3 areas to see if they're really understanding it. But really for me, the main thing is getting them on the phone quickly. Don't just say like, here's your desk, go ahead, and let's just see how you do. You got to coach them, and the team leader should do it. The intake manager should do it. You can have different team members that are really good at what they're doing do it so they get a flavor for everybody, but don't put them on the phone training with somebody that's having problems and challenges, because they're going to pick up those habits and those behaviors. So just put the time into it and schedule it on the calendar. And, you know, the first 90 days should be aggressive training. Not, you know, they get 1 or 2 weeks of training and then that's it. They should be considered in training for at least the first 90 days.
What is your typical response time on phone contacts?
So you're talking about leads, right?
Yes.
Okay, so above and beyond the inbound calls that everybody's getting, any of the money that you're spending on leads, whether it's text leads or chats or anything like that at all, or email, it's immediate. You've got to have somebody focusing on that. That lead raised their hand on the spot for help. And so you're like, you got to get to them right away. I mean, as fast as you possibly can, because they're going to call your competition. They're going to do the due diligence. They're consumers like you and I. So they are going to call your competition no matter what. You want to be the first one there. So it doesn't make any sense, like we talked about earlier, to build in systems and spend money to get all these leads to come in, but you forgot to cover, well, who's going to handle these leads? Who's going to communicate with them? Do we have a script for them? So put that plan in place. Really, your intake team is part of your marketing team, and we're all salespeople. And that's the kind of sales talk you should have in your law firm, and really consider intake part of marketing. So all those leads, and when you're checking off the boxes with, I'm going to do this marketing campaign, we're going to get this number of leads, all the different resources that you're using and spending your money, add intake on it. Okay, who in intake is going to be our specialist on chasing those leads? So the answer is immediate, but put a system in place.
How do you approach those leads that come in after hours? Obviously, a lot of law firms can't have somebody on the phone 24/7. They can't have somebody monitoring chat 24/7 unless they have a service doing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
What about those ones that come in after hours? How do you approach those?
Yeah, I mean, 24/7, I mean, you're absolutely right. They're not going to have lawyers and intake specialists all hours waiting for leads to come in, at 1 a.m. or whatever it is. So in all honesty, what you need, you can have your own internal call center that you've designed that's yours and it's at your law firm. And you can have it be 24/7. Some law firms do that, but there's nothing wrong with outsourcing those calls to a call center that knows how to do it. They understand law firms. They know how to do it. You've got to test them out, maybe pick two and do them both at the same time to see who does a better job. But one of the things that you really need to do, don't just pick a call center because your buddy said, hey, I'm using so-and-so. That doesn't mean anything. You have to inspect what you expect. So ask the call center if you can listen to some of the phone calls that they've been taking. Ask them if you can have references of people that they work with, that they've been working with for a really long time that you can call. And the other thing that you need to do that most people don't do still today, they have us do it for them, but you really need to do it yourself, is build a relationship with that call center. You can't just check off the box and say, oh, okay, Chris will get a call center for after hours and make sure they're Spanish speaking and everything. And wait, boom, done. No, it's not the case. They are now your staff. They're your team. They're your staff. They're touching your money and you're trusting them. And they're not even in your building. You don't even know. I mean, you might be on the East Coast and they might be on the West Coast. So build a relationship with the top leader at that call center and have a scheduled time that you meet with them on a regular basis and listen to the phone recordings that they're handling after hours, inspect what you expect, and tell them what you want them to improve on. And if they're doing a great job, tell them that too, because they don't hear that a lot. So tell them that you're doing a great job. You want them to fight for you and handle your leads. But there's nothing wrong with it. What's wrong is when you don't build a relationship with them and you don't listen to the call recordings and you don't inspect the process.
Do you have any strategies for law firms who are just getting started and maybe they have a secretary or maybe a dedicated intake specialist who has not been recorded before, never been scrutinized before, strategies to make that a positive experience? Because no one likes to be recorded and then go back and listen to the recording, like you had mentioned earlier. Any strategies for making that a positive experience that you can offer?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things. The process that I mentioned earlier about how to critique the call or review the call, what's working, what are the opportunities, and then how can you fix it, how can I fix it, how can we work together to do it, that would still be the same outline, if you will. But what's really important is that you're honest with them. So you don't just do a sneak attack. You let them know that the calls are being recorded and why, and some good language is, so Mary or John, we record our phone calls for marketing purposes. We're spending a lot of money on marketing, and we want to make sure that the calls are going, really well. We also want to enhance what you're already doing right.
Mm.
So you come from a positive, because this is forever. Whatever I'm telling you, this is forever. This is not like, let's just do this for a month and see if people get good. People get good at everything, and they fall off the tracks and they go back to old bad habits and behaviors. This is forever. So you want Mary and John to embrace it. So come from a positive place and tell them the language that I just said. Talk to them about how uncomfortable you are as a person listening to your recorded voice, listening to your own and critiquing your own phone calls, and let them hear some of your phone calls so they realize you're in the same situation. And tell them right up front. I know, like, whenever we do a training class, we say the same thing to all of our clients every single month. I know that none of you like listening to your recorded voice. I get it. I know that none of you like being reviewed and critiqued no matter what. I get it. We do need to do this to enhance what you're already doing right. And this is really the best way to learn. In addition to that would be role playing. And we're all here together to help each other. Nobody is allowed to critique anybody and, throw them under the bus or be nasty at all. So you want to make sure that when you are giving feedback, after you let Mary and John know why you're doing it and how often you're going to do it, and let them listen to some calls first so they can get through a little bit of hearing their own voice, you want to just be kind. At the end of the day, people will learn when you're kind. You can tell someone, you can even say to someone, we talked about this before, and maybe I didn't give you the right information or the right way to do it. So let's review it. Instead of just being nasty about it, just be kind and find out how you can help them. And the kinder you are and you let them critique you also, it'll go smoother. But I have to tell you, it's just, it's not easy for people. It's not easy for them at all. I'll tell you something really quick. I am a runner, and I went to a running camp one weekend, and I did not know this was going to happen. The instructor for the weekend, she had her iPad out, and she filmed everybody running, and I was mortified. I was so mortified. First off, I saw myself. She brought everybody into the retreat cabin, and then she had this big screen, and she had everybody up there. I was like, oh my God. And I'm looking at myself, and I'm like, oh my God. And then everybody is critiquing me.
Sneak attack.
Oh my God, I was a mess. And I'm going to tell you the truth, because I want you to understand that this is how your staff feels. And it's also how you feel, too. You feel this way, too. Your staff is going to be mortified. And some people are going to cry. Sorry, they are. And you got to be ready to take care of them and help them. I remember what I did. I called my partner and I said, I got to come home early. I said, I can't take it because we're going to get filmed tomorrow to show how our improvements went. So I'm telling you, love, care, and concern, okay? Because your intake team, if you don't have an intake team, you don't have a law firm.
That's a great story. And I had one last question about marketing and the intake teams. So a lot of law firms will have a marketing company or digital advertising company or what have you. How can those vendors who may not be part of the internal team of the law firm help support the intake process? What can attorneys reach out to them for to help support the intake process?
So when I answer you, Matthew, if I'm not answering you the way you want, just tell me. So you're asking how can the marketing vendors help support the intake process?
Yeah.
Okay. So a lot of marketing folks out there, businesses for law firms, they have access to the phone calls. They record them, they can listen to them. And you know what? Make use of that service. So talk to the marketing company, build a strong relationship with them. Again, don't just check the box. Build a strong relationship with them and tell them that you want them to listen to them and give you feedback. You're asking for it, and have a regular session with them, not just about the marketing campaign, but about the phone calls that you would like to have a heads up, and it doesn't take, they don't have to be experts at critiquing calls to tell you, hey, I listened to a few calls and they didn't really sound customer service friendly, or I listened to a few calls and they were amazing. You got to hear this. So that's what I would suggest that you do.
Great advice. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been listening to Chris Mullins, the phone sales doctor. Chris, where can people go to get more information about you?
They can email me directly at phonesuccessdoctor, DOCTOR, at gmail.com. Phonesuccessdoctor@gmail.com. So just email me directly. And anybody that's watching this, all you have to do is email me and mention Matthew and that you saw this podcast, and you will get one free critique of one of your prospect phone calls. So you can send us the recording and I will personally listen to it, and then I'll talk to you on the phone, no strings attached, and I'll tell you what worked and I'll tell you what the opportunities are.
Chris, that is extremely generous. Thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show today.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the ESQ Marketing Podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.